Wonderful. Good evening to all who have registered for today's event, and welcome back into my attic for our webinar presentation to hear how our city plans to preserve pre-existing affordable housing options, create more mixed income housing properties, and update on public-private partnerships and Atlanta's affordable housing plan. Today we'll be speaking to some of the most impactful folks in the industry about what they are currently seeing and how we are looking to our city's future. This will continue to be a weekly series dedicated to Atlantans, as well as all others throughout the US, Canada, and the United Kingdom. My name is Hunter Davis, Atlanta Market Manager for BisNow, and welcome all who are in attendance today, and thank you for taking the time to listen to what our speakers have planned to deliver. Before we get started, it is impossible to speak on today's topic, or any topic for that matter, without addressing the events unfolding in Atlanta and throughout our country. While neither I nor BisNow claim to have all of the answers here, it's clear that change is needed in many facets of our society. In light of recent events, our hope is that liberty, peace, equality, and justice for all, and to those who have been harmed, either physically, emotionally, or financially, know that we are with you. BisNow rejects racism and all forms of discrimination. The scenes unfolding in cities throughout America are painful. We are listening, and we encourage the entire commercial real estate industry to take notice and do more to make the industry and America more diverse and equitable. BisNow's mission has always been to inform and connect and advance the commercial real estate community, and that is what we will continue to do here today. If you're watching this at a later date, it's my hope that we've grown as a country and a society from the time that this webinar was recorded. Before we jump in, we have a few housekeeping notes. To all of our attendees, if you are not presenting today, you are on mute and without video. So don't worry about your barking dog or your children running around in the background. As this is a video platform and a lot of us are dialed in from home, you may experience a slight delay. If you experience technical difficulties, please log out and log back in again. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat button that will function as a digital networking for all that are in attendance today. And I welcome everybody that's comfortable to start us off by saying your name and the company that you work for now. You'll also see a button that says Q&A. This button is where you'll submit questions for our panel, as there will be some time for questions at the end of the webinar, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. Only questions asked throughout the Q&A function will be considered for the panelists. Biggest note, do not worry. The recordings of this webinar will be emailed out after the session, and will also be available on BisNow's website in case you missed any of the information. Lastly, I'd like to personally thank our sponsor for the day, the Affordable Housing Investment Brokerage, whose sole purpose is the direct, confidential sale of affordable housing properties by integrating national databases of both Section 8 and Section 42 owners, working to reach a broader buyer pool in an increasingly inclusive industry. So thank you so much to the Affordable Housing Investment Brokerage today. Without further ado, we'll jump into our content. We'll be speaking today with Denise Cleveland-Leggett, Regional Administrator for HUD, Eugene Jones, President and CEO of the Atlanta Housing Authority, Kyle Shoemaker, Managing Director for the Affordable Housing Investment Brokerage, and our moderator for the evening, Margaret Stagmeyer, Managing Partner of TriStar. Margie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. We're very excited about the program today, and thank you everyone for joining. And we've got this amazing panel, so I'm going to speak as little as possible. And we've got our questions ready, but we do welcome questions from the audience. And I'm going to go around and ask for each panel member to just briefly introduce themselves and maybe give a few thoughts about HUD's response and Atlanta Housing's response to address housing during these uncharted territory and times. I'm going to go ahead and start with myself. I do have properties with HUD and with Atlanta Housing, and I can tell you as a landlord to over 3,000 apartment units that I have been really impressed with the response by Atlanta Housing. I feel like the staff at Atlanta Housing has shown true leadership, and they've even offered some incentives of free rent for any tenant that's in their program. And they did that early in the game. So it gave a lot of our tenants, because most of our tenants are low-income earners, and it gave them a lot of peace of mind. So I just want to give a little shout out to Atlanta Housing and HUD. I think their leadership during this time has been remarkable. So why don't we go ahead and start with you, Eugene?
Hi, Eugene Jones, President and CEO of Atlanta Housing. I want to echo your comments. I think HUD has been a great partner. Never been in this situation before. I give my hats off to the regional administrator, to Denise, the local staff here, and also HUD headquarters. I think they've been a tremendous partner. They keep asking, what can they do? What can we do better? And so they've opened up the pearly gates, and I do appreciate that from U.S. Department of Housing, Urban Development, and our fine regional administrator, Denise.
Okay, Kyle?
Yeah, thank you. You know, in March, when it felt like the world was falling apart, when I thought about my business, I thought about what I was witnessed in the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, when liquidity completely froze up, and was concerned if our work was going to be able to continue, if deals would just freeze up. And I've got to say, I've just been consistently impressed by all of the many parties involved that it takes to get these deals done, including agencies like HUD and local housing authorities that frequently would have difficulty reacting quickly to changes, but frankly have reacted very quickly in this crisis. HUD has made very specific adjustments to how they process paperwork and accept paperwork that have allowed deals to continue. The deals that we sell usually are being improved after they're done, and so this has just been a benefit to all the business people involved and the tenants as well. So I'm impressed and glad to be a part of this.
So I saved the best for last, Denise. I figured we'd be loving on you and then you could respond.
Well, thank you, Margie. Of course, I'm Denise Cleveland-Leggett, Regional Administrator for HUD. I'm over Region 4, which is the largest of the 10 HUD regions, the entire Southeast plus Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And I am so proud to be a part of HUD. Thank you all so much, Margie, Eugene, and others for your recognition of our hard work at HUD. Secretary Carson has really been a partner in this. We've been pushing to try and make sure that our recipients, our partners, do not miss a beat due to coronavirus and all of the issues that we're facing. And so we have, through our team effort, tried to push forth not just only funding, but all of the things that come with that. And it's been also a privilege to try and cut down on the regulatory work that inhibit so many processes from going forward. That can be a game changer. And for someone such as myself and others who have come from the private sector, it's a different animal when you're dealing with the government. And so I appreciate Secretary Carson's vision to try and push us to cut down on regulations so that we can serve the people that we are partners with.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started with questions. I'm going to start with Eugene. Has the need for affordable housing increased in the past 6 months?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, before the pandemic, there was a crisis. There's still a crisis that we need more affordable housing. I think with our community partners, our great relationship with the HUD office here and so forth, we are still keep pushing projects forward. Yes, we don't have all the money that we want, but I think what we have right now and with our partners and with the state that we're moving these developments along, we're never going to fulfill that need. We can try to get close, but the need is going to be even worse as we go through this pandemic because of people who can't afford where they're living at anymore. They may be displaced. I feel that that's going to be an increase of a burden on not only just the city, but every housing authority across this country trying to figure out, because everyone needs a house and we need to try to fulfill that the best that we can. I think working with HUD and coming up with innovative programs, we're going to be more innovative subsequent to whenever this pandemic is over into subsequent years. And so it's not going to ever go away. It's going to get worse before it gets better, in my opinion, professional opinion. Just like back in 2008 when the market crashed, we were in a fickle right there. And so we had to figure that out. We did. And so we're going to do the same thing because of this pandemic.
All right. Question for Denise. How does Atlanta compare to other cities facing the same affordable housing crisis? You seem to have, you have the Southeastern perspective.
Yes, Margie. Well, it's a difficult question everywhere. Every state. I'm over 8 states and two territories. Puerto Rico, which has suffered so much after the hurricane and earthquake, and so this is and I have to agree with Eugene. This is an issue and a problem that is ongoing. It has been difficult before COVID-19, and it will continue, but I am excited about the programs that we're pushing and that we're working with to try and curtail the affordable housing issue. And it's got to be a public-private partnership. It can no longer be dependence on the government to come in with the funding to cure everything. Because of our relationships with public-private partnerships all over the region, it has been a godsend, and seeing the affordable housing start to, we start to whittle away at that. And every city, I can speak about Miami, which has had a number of issues, but has, through its private partnerships, has come up in an incredible way. The city of Nashville leads the nation in RAD conversions, and they are doing public-private partnerships. Many of our cities, Tampa, Florida, city after city. And so with those partnerships, yes, we do have the challenge of facing affordable housing, but with our concerted effort, I believe that we can tackle the issue, because I've seen it city after city, the wonderful things that have come about because of this partnership, not eradicating the issue, but really putting a dent in the issue from city to city and from state to state.
And I think House ATL is a perfect example of that too. The public-private partnership between the city of Atlanta and the mayor's office and so many nonprofits and for-profit developers. So I think where the mayor's trying to set aside $1 billion. I think that's a great example. Let's go to Kyle. So Kyle, how has COVID-19 impacted investment sales and debt markets? Are you seeing COVID-19 affect the production of affordable housing stock?
Well, yeah, there's certainly been an impact. The most quantifiable impact I think I can give is on debt markets. Okay, where I guess in deal timing. Okay, I mentioned earlier all the different participants having flexibility and adjusting to how they're getting their role done, whether it's an agency giving an approval or an appraiser figuring out how to get a site visit conducted. Everybody's had to adapt, and so that's probably slowed a lot of transactions down and pushed them closing date out farther. But for the most part, at least what we've seen has still been continuing. Major debt providers like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had to increase reserve requirements up front to protect their loans that they were making, which certainly has an impact on the economics of a deal. So I'm sure that there's been some pricing adjustment, but there have still been closings moving forward. There's certainly concern about the investment market for low-income housing tax credits, as corporations are facing a tough economic time and won't have as much of a demand. But generally, these developments seem to still be pushing forward, even after a little bit of upheaval in debt markets for a little while there. I can say that there are a few transactions I saw fall apart where buyers simply wanted to pull back from the uncertainty in the marketplace. But anecdotally, I think there may be even more participants who have entered or are seriously trying to enter the marketplace now, as professional real estate investors continue to see the need for this product and the unfortunate reality that, as Eugene said earlier, we were in a housing crisis before COVID, and now over 40 million people have lost their jobs. And so
Wow.
it's an industry that had urgency to begin with and is even more urgent today.
All right. All right, next question. Landlords and borrowers are weighing in on mortgage forbearance. I know that the Federal Reserve encouraged a lot of banks out there to just offer forbearance, at least for a couple months. And they did that starting around March and April when all this unfolded. So basically, many landlords that I've spoken to in the last couple months are really weighing in on whether they accept forbearance or not. And because they don't know how that's going to affect their credit rating. So Denise, this is a question for you. Will the COVID-related programs encouraged by the Federal Reserve basically affect people's credit rating in the eyes of HUD?
Well, with regards to that, HUD has been on the forefront with the forbearance movement with its FHA loans. And it came out back a few months ago, putting a forbearance for 80 days on the payments, mortgage payments. And then not only with 180, there's also an opportunity to push another 180. As long as the forbearance is in place, it will not affect the credit rating. It will not affect a person's credit rating up or down. And so, so the answer to that is no, it will not, as long as a forbearance is in place. And so HUD and FHA is encouraging people to get the forbearance. In June of this year, June 30th, the lift is coming for the moratorium on evictions for FHA. However, there is a possibility, there's been discussions on trying to extend that as well. But as long as the individuals are within the forbearance, they cannot be evicted. With regards to our multifamily, there is not a strong moratorium in place in terms of the credit rating, but there is a 60-day moratorium. And so that for multifamily owners until July 25th, there will be a forbearance on payments for multifamily unit owners. And then after that, it will be lifted. In PIH, they have a shorter period of time, or when at public housing, they have a shorter period of time. But we are encouraging at public housing, we're encouraging all the lenders to try and work with individuals, and HUD is doing whatever it can to work with lenders and work with individuals in order to put people in a good place, because it doesn't help anyone, clearly the people that we're contracting with, to be in a bad economic situation. And so we are putting forth our efforts through FHA and other program areas to try and work with lenders and work with individuals as much as possible. But as long as they are in forbearance under FHA, they will not have an effect on their credit rating.
Okay, good. Well, I am in the process of refinancing one of our apartment communities through a Fannie Mae loan, and we did accept a forbearance, but Fannie Mae was able to waive that, understanding the times. So anyway, all right, Eugene, we've got a question. What areas of the Atlanta region need the most affordable housing stock, and how can the commercial real estate community address these needs?
My quick answer is that the whole city of Atlanta needs more affordable housing. I know they're doing a lot of work on the west side with West Side Future Funds. I think we need to do the same thing on the east and in the south of Atlanta. I think that's where most of the low income, those who are working, need some type of relief and need some affordable housing. I think we also need to go into the north to build affordable housing so we can have parity, that everyone has decent place to live. They got a quality house, they got better schools, better neighborhoods, and better parks. So we want to spread the wealth. I think with our collaboration with Side Future Funds, I think we should take that model and take it to the east and to the south, but also looking at opportunities with our community partners and so forth, and look at specific things and being innovative in our approach. Again, we just don't build bricks and sticks or anything like that. We have to have the community involved with innovation when it comes to the retail side. How do we get more of the big box stores to invest? How do we not have food deserts in the land and so forth? And how do we strategically, methodically bring everyone together and make a plan that makes sense to everyone that can function for the next 30 years?
All right, great. Okay, this is a question for everyone in the panel. What can the greater development community do to support affordable housing projects and initiatives? And so why don't we go ahead and start with Denise?
Thank you, Margie. There are a number of different initiatives. One of the things that had taken off before the COVID-19 was opportunity zones. They have been an incredible vehicle in order to make changes in communities. I can cite a number of those, and it's public-private partnership at its best. In Memphis, Tennessee, we have a private partner that has come in to change the trajectory of Memphis, Tennessee to the tune of $950 million. That's a huge investment. And they have set aside 20% for affordable housing. When we first started with opportunity zones, there were many people who were trying to determine and decide how could they put in housing, how could they make the numbers work with affordable housing. But there are people who are doing it. In the city of Birmingham, they are working on, and we've broken ground on affordable housing units and workforce housing units. It's been a collaboration of not only the mayor, but private developers and the community, getting the community involved to decide what do they need. City after city, Miami, we're going down at the end of the month to do, I believe, the first in the nation, a opportunity zone which has affordable housing and a public housing, and it has a number of other things that have not been seen before in an opportunity zone. And so people who are innovative, people who want to make it work can make it work, because I've seen it, not just in those cities, but other cities as well. And with the collaboration of the public and private partners, it can work. Here in Atlanta, Invest Atlanta, it has been working on affordable housing in opportunity zones, and which is phenomenal. And so the more that we collaborate, the more that we work together and get the private developers on line with us, it makes an incredible difference. There are some who have taken the bull by the horn, and many developers throughout this region, but the innovation of the housing authorities as well. One of the things that I just wanted to mention, Atlanta has been basically the stalwarts for affordable housing and for mixed income housing. It was the first in the nation to to put itself out there for mixed income housing, and it has been a model. I go around this region, and individuals and housing authorities and developers tell me they come to Atlanta to see what the purpose-built communities and see what's been done there. Many have put in schools so that knowing that education has to be a part of this growth. So not just the growth in housing, but the growth in the community, and it has to be a holistic approach, not just housing, and we can do it with development.
Right, Kyle, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, it's a topic I've actually spent a fair amount of time thinking about, and actually started to advocate towards the broader development community to support the existing programs. In my work, I've met and worked with any number of multifamily investors or developers who want nothing to do with working with government programs that add some complications to their business. And recently, as we've seen agencies or governments respond to the housing crisis with rent control rules, for example, or other laws that can feel restricting to a market rate developer, it becomes more apparent to me that the affordable housing business as it stands and operates today needs support from folks who are in the housing and development community broadly. The HUD does incredibly important work and needs political support to keep maintaining and expanding what they do. The low-income tax credit is a proven job creator in addition to a creator of housing, and has broad bipartisan support in the government, but will continually come under attack as we look for ways to balance a budget and try and spend less as a country going forward, but is truly demonstrated to be an investment vehicle. The more that the broader development community can support these programs that have already been effective, then I think the better off we all are, both from a business and societal perspective.
All right. And how about you, Eugene?
Just real quickly, I just want to piggyback on what Kyle says. A lot of developers put up a black flag when they work with the federal government. They just think there's too much red tape. They don't care to get involved. And a lot of these developers have never done residential housing or multifamily. Before this pandemic started, we were getting ready to do a development conference with Beltline and also with Invest Atlanta and the city of Atlanta to talk to these developers and entice them to say that here we have some great opportunities. We want these developers who have not got into the Atlanta market to find a way in which we can work with them with community, public-private partnerships. And so once we can do that, I think developers will find a different type of insight that this is something good to invest, something good to do. As Denise has stated before, opportunity zones, we need to do more of that in the city of Atlanta.
And
Right.
I want to just briefly say, Margie, to Eugene's point, we did last year, we were supposed to do it again this year until COVID-19. We did a summit on affordable housing, and we brought in the public sector, public housing authorities, but we also brought multifamily, we brought in banks, we brought in developers, we brought in top people in the industry. We convened for 2 days. We had 350 people attending, and it was a great event because people have not been able to interact with each other. And as Eugene said, they need to be able to talk to each other to see how they can collectively work together. And that was the whole purpose of having this summit on emerging strategies for economic collaboration between all of the parties. And when things calm down again from the COVID-19, we will look to do that again. Perhaps we can collaborate, Eugene, in the future.
All right. Well, and I'll give you an example to piggyback on your response, Denise. So TriStar did a deal in the city of Atlanta a couple years ago where we partnered with the city of Atlanta, Atlanta Housing. We actually created an impact fund and raised several $1 million with a private social impact fund. And then we actually got a bank, and we like to buy large blighted properties next to failing schools, and we use housing, affordable housing, to turn schools around. There's a very deep relationship between schools and housing, and pretty much every property we've been involved with, we've been able to really improve the school. So that was my first experience in a public-private partnership with the federal government, with the local government, with the philanthropy, and I can tell you it was work, but the results have been really phenomenal, and our cost of capital was just under 3%. So we were able to really keep our rents affordable. We hit a 40% AMI level, and wow. The first phase just opened up, and it's 100% leased. So it's been a great partnership. So, now for the final question. Basically, where can multifamily owners and FHA homeowners, where can they go for assistance? I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Denise.
Well, we have a multifamily division at HUD who works very closely with our partners. And one of the things that we've prided ourselves with through this COVID-19 is being in close proximity and close communication with our partners. And I have the website, but I've got to grab it on my paper. But it is, if you go to HUD.gov, it breaks it down by multifamily issues and division in the program area. But we have a phenomenal group of people and who work with all of our partners and willing to help, whether it's getting through tumultuous regulations, whether it's just finding how far your application is in the process. I have had multiple people calling me and saying, you know, it's taking a long time. I submitted, but we're about to close, and we need to close. Where are things in the process? And so we do that to search out where things are, because it's not in HUD's. It's not to HUD's benefit to try and prolong a situation and prolong the process. We want to make it as expeditious as possible, and so we have a full staff of people who are ready, willing, and able to help on the multifamily side, as well as all the other sides, FHA side, FHEO, public housing. We have a great group and a great team of people who will provide whatever assistance is necessary to get through this gauntlet known as the federal government.
All right, Kyle, you're next.
You know, I'm thinking about it, and I guess I'm wondering, do we mean, in what way do we mean, where can somebody go for help? Are we talking, we think about structuring a deal or with a ongoing concern, or?
I guess assistance for like rent payment, mortgage issues. You know, where are you seeing in your toolbox where you can help buyers and sellers basically structure rent and other resources?
Honestly, I don't know that I've, at least in my direct business, seen a broad need for that type of assistance yet. Even in low-income tax credit properties where tenants are paying their rent, generally speaking, there's not a rent subsidy like there is with a Section 8 contract. The folks I've been working with have seen collections be maintained through the last couple of months, and we've talked a little bit about forbearance options, and largely have decided that they shouldn't accept offers of forbearance with their property's debt because they've continued to perform so far. So I don't know that I've got a good answer for you on that.
Okay. Well, that's a great answer. Okay, Eugene.
I would just echo what Denise has stated before. You know, you go on HUD's website, HUD.gov, and it has a plethora of information. The one thing I have to attribute to the regional office here is that there's phone numbers and there's emails. And once you call or email them, you will get a response back from them right away. They don't hesitate, which is good customer service. You have our office. You can always look on our website. All our email addresses are on our phone numbers. You can always call the city of Atlanta. And you can also call DCA, the state agency, to get information about what's going on, what amenities that you can look at about rent reform, rent reduction, anything that you want to know. You can go to those 4 sites and probably get the information that you need.
Okay.
Mark, if I could briefly, the HUD.gov is great in terms of, but specifically if you want to go to multifamily, it's mfcommunications@hud.gov. That's for multifamily. And for FHA, it's answers@hud.gov. So, you know, I can attest to the fact that when you go to the website, people will answer. I get emails almost daily directly because my email is on the website. So people who are in need, who I've had multiple emails for people who are homeless, and I answer every email that comes my way, but you will get an answer. And of course, my information is always there. So if you have a problem, contact me.
That's remarkable. Thank you. So TriStar, we have a nonprofit that we started, that we launched. It's called Star C, and we started an eviction relief fund about 6 weeks ago. We had been loosely giving eviction relief or rental assistance for years, but we've never made it a formal program. And in 5 weeks, we've raised $1.7 million for the metro area. So if you're a landlord, and it's a landlord-driven program, you can go to www.star-c.org and you register your property. If you're near a low-performing school, basically you can register your property, and then the fund will pay up to 40% of rent if you match 10%, and the tenant has to match 50%. If you're in Cobb County and have a property, our fund will match up to 70%. So that's a resource for landlords out there if you want to offer rental assistance to your tenants in low-income communities around Atlanta. So I'm getting ready to open it up for questions. We've got quite a few. Does anybody of the panel, does anyone have any final words or anything else they would like to add before I open it up for questions? Everybody good?
Well, I just want to say that we've given, HUD has given $12 billion during this COVID-19 crisis. Well, we've given specifically $1 billion for homeless initiatives. We've given $3 billion to community groups, and we've given billions of dollars to our public housing. And we've also tried to make an effort to help sustain people during this time through the Paycheck Protection Plan, which allows people to pay their rent, pay their obligations during this incredible time, and this very difficult time. And I don't know how long we'll be able to do it, but we have done, I think, a very good job. And I was just here with the secretary, the vice president on Friday, meeting with some of those people who were recipients of the Paycheck Protection, and how they talked about how it really helped them. So we have tried to do whatever we can, and we will continue to be partners and help the people who are in need.
Great.
I just want to say thank you to our strong mayor that we have in this city, based on what she's going through and how she's keeping this city together. I want to thank my board of commissioners, especially my chairman, Dr. Chris Edwards. I want to thank my wonderful staff for going through this pandemic and still providing services like we're supposed to, and a great resident population which we serve. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. So we have a question from Della White. How will Atlanta's affordable housing plan be revised as a result of COVID-19? Will this revision impact the community or developers in a positive or negative way? Thank you.
It's probably too early to tell right now. I think there are going to be some tweaks to the mayor's program. We're talking about timing issues and so forth. I think we will still stick with that plan as best as we can, but we are probably going to have to tweak it based on this pandemic and the opportunities to go back into these neighborhoods. One of the key things in going to these neighborhoods is having a great conversation with the residents who live in that area and so forth, and making that communication and that partnership. And so that's going to be key. That may be one of the things that'll slow us down, but we still have to move forward when we're trying to get community involvement and those public-private partnerships. But it's going to be tweaked, but not major.
Okay. We have another question. What are a few examples of public-private partnerships, affordable housing projects in the metro Atlanta area? So they're asking for some examples of some public-private partnerships in Atlanta.
Well, Herndon Homes is one that's going on right now. We have scholars that we have over there by the HBCU universities. We have them all over the city. One of the things that we're looking at is Bowen out there in the South and so forth. And there's just many examples. If you go on our website and look at all the potential development that we have, It lists every place where we're at and where we're starting construction, in the construction, or in the midst of construction. And it's very detailed where it's located at, how many units, how many affordable units are. I think our website is by far the best across this country about putting out information.
All right. Here's a question from Rhonda Thompson. With the forbearance, once it's over, will the modification, with the forbearance, once it is over, will the modification of needed affect the credit? That's how it was typed. So I think the question is once this phase is over, will forbearances affect your credit? And that's for you, Denise.
Well, once the forbearance is over, there is a possibility that credit could be affected. However, we have had conversations, so that the lenders and those individuals who where the forbearance is needed, that there be ongoing conversations to try and avert it, because we understand that this crisis, the effects of this crisis are ongoing. One of the things that the owners can do is, if they put into to the credit companies, whoever that is, Equifax, whoever it is, if they note that this is a disaster-related issue, then there will not be any effect on the credit. But once the forbearance is lifted, I think we are all in conversations to see what we can do. We are certainly willing to be partners to try and help those discussions, but we are trying to hold off the forbearance as long as we can. And if it's FHA, it's not only the 180, but you can put another 180 days on top of that to hold off and to be included in forbearance. For multifamily, it's a little shorter, and for PIH, it's a little bit shorter, but we are willing to try and have conversations to help as much as we can, because we understand that's a major issue.
Okay. Here's a question from Anthony Kazi. How does Atlanta collaborate with out-of-state developers?
We collaborate by virtue of putting out a request for a proposal when it comes to new developments in the city. We sit down, we do a request for proposal, we do an evaluation based on making sure that those who qualify, who provide a response, meet the minimum requirements of the RFP. We sit down, we talk, and then we make a decision. And then with that decision, we go to the Board of Commissioners, and they approve our decision to move forward with a developer, if it's out of state or in state, to provide and to develop affordable housing in the city.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can piggyback on that a little bit, in that my firm works nationally, and just to comment on how it is to work with Atlanta and the broader state of Georgia, we continually see interest from investors from around the country in getting into the state, particularly from affordable housing focused investors and developers. The Georgia state low-income housing tax credit that can be layered with the federal tax credit is such a successful program that a number of other states have been working to basically copy it and implement it themselves. We've seen recent significant transactions where some of the most respected and in-demand affordable housing developers in the country, I'm thinking of Jonathan Rose from New York and Preservation Partners from Los Angeles, have entered the market. And so I can give some evidence to back up Eugene's comments that out-of-state developers get all kinds of support to come and do good work in Atlanta and beyond.
All right. This is from Jim Cheeks. How is Atlanta Housing and HUD using single-family housing to address the affordability crisis, specifically small but not tiny homes, ADUs, and cluster homes? Is single-family a focus moving forward?
Well, I think it's going to move forward. We're talking about home ownership opportunities on the public housing side, our self-sufficiency program, and also a rent to own on a Section 8 side. And so yes, part of our portfolio, when we do mixed income developments, we also try to have a for sale portion on our development so that we can provide home ownership and mix it into mixed income development. So HUD works with us diligently when we provide a plan, something that's approved by not only the Board of Commissioners, but from the community as it's involved, and HUD takes a look at it. Everyone has to understand that the land of housing just doesn't make its own decision, it just moves forward. We make our decision, we have the board to approve it, and we also have to have HUD have to bless it because they are the regulatory and they are the responsible entity for us to be successful. They have to make sure that we are compliant, and we want to make sure that everyone who's invested in that their investment is protected.
All right.
And that's right, Eugene. And one of the things that we work towards as well, we have homeowners down payment. We have a down payment program that is very helpful to individuals who are first-time home buyers. And but all of the things that Eugene mentioned are things that we work with the Housing Authority, not just of course here in Atlanta, but all over this region, to try and bolster home ownership, because I think that the goal is not just to rent a house in perpetuity. The goal is for those people who want to own a home. That is our goals. And because of our low mortgage rates, and because of our ability to insure the mortgages, it really goes a long way in helping individuals towards home ownership.
Okay. This is from Zach Goisenier. How will the economy impact municipal budgets and affect incentives cities and counties can offer developers to build affordable housing? So what's the impact of the economy on municipal budgets and I guess budget's ability to offer incentives?
Well, I think that's kind of premature to ask that question right now, based on what we're going to be suffering through the next, to the end of the year. I think you can speculate, but I don't think it's going to look pretty because of what the lost revenue that the city is going through, the municipalities, all over the states, all over the country. So I think what we need to do is sit down and find out what that impact is going to be and do an assessment, and then come up with hopefully some type of strategy to move forward. But it's not going to look pretty.
All right. Basically, Carolyn Gerritz writes, do our elderly residents have adequate alternatives for remaining in the community as they age?
How come I'm getting all the questions?
I know, you're just very popular, Eugene.
Yes, we'll have our seniors stay in place. I think what we do with our seniors, and we don't call them senior buildings, we call it our buildings who we house individuals. Predominantly they're seniors, but we have those who are handicap accessible and so forth. We are not trying to move them out. We're trying to provide services to the building. That means testing for sickle cell or high blood pressure, dental, and so forth. So we're trying to bring the services to them. It is dependent on a relative and so forth, if they want to make sure that they want to transition elderly component and so forth. But typically we work with our community providers all over the city based on the need and what our great resident services department does to make sure that we have the adequate services and we have the opportunity for them to come into our building and find out what that is. We have presentations from the community supporters who support on the medical side and so forth, and on mental health. I think we do a great job on covering those bases and providing those services for our elderly. I don't think any elderly feels threatened that they're going to be moved out because they're getting older. They may get a little sicker and they may slow down, but we provide those types of services as an as-needed basis throughout all of our developments.
And I wanted to say that we absolutely respect our senior community at HUD, and I've been all over this region and visited multiple senior homes from Georgia down to Puerto Rico. We have multiple units that are reserved for the elderly and senior citizens. And Not only do we respect that at HUD, but I have a mother that's turned 90, she turned 93 this month. So I absolutely have a love and respect for our senior citizens, and we have loan programs in place for senior buildings. We have a number of different accommodations, and so yes, we do have accommodations for our senior citizens.
So Maggie, let me give you a tip. I'll be 65 in September, so I'm a senior already. So I have to make sure that I'm accommodating for when I get older to have the best accommodations that we can provide in the city of Atlanta.
So you're wise. When you hit 65,
Absolutely.
you become absolutely wise.
Yes.
All right, Kyle, what are some funding sources that can help rebuild hard to develop neighborhoods? I mean, you're the equity guy, the debt and equity guy. Do you have any suggestions in your toolbox?
Well, the suggestions are to work through what your state housing agency can provide. The Housing Finance Agency that allocates low-income tax credits will have different sources of funding to layer onto a project. The city should have different funding sources to layer onto a project, or the housing authority. And any of these bodies are able to contribute in some way to work with the developer to make something work. So make sure you're building relationships with these folks and studying what's available to you and providing necessary political support to keep that work coming.
Okay.
And one of the things I wanted to add to that, the opportunity zones are a vehicle for those who can become involved with that. Of course, you have capital gains advantages, but the whole goal is to develop in blighted communities, those communities that have been neglected and rejected for years. And so that's why you can have developers develop to the tune of $950 million in Memphis, in blighted areas and revitalizing areas. The same in Birmingham and other cities that have taken a hold of opportunity zones. They are also a vehicle. It has to work, obviously, for the private developer, but if it works for them, it is a game changer for everyone involved.
Okay. We have time for one last question, and it's from John Thompson. Who should be the first person in Atlanta a new developer should contact to create a joint venture for a multifamily office and retail project in Atlanta? I mean, I can answer that one, John. If you go to the House ATL website, Megan Shannon Boltic with Enterprise is in charge of Brading Resources. So she is a great person for you to consider contacting. Does anyone else have a suggestion? Nope. All right.
Well, as you said, Margie, I mean, again, I thank everybody for being in attendance today. I thank you guys all for being here and speaking with us. And I would love to open up the floor so that everybody can have an opportunity for some final statements. Denise, we'll start with you, and then we'll work our way around the room to close everything out.
Thank you. It has been an honor to be here. Anytime that we talk about affordable housing, I'm happy to do that. We are in unprecedented times with the untimely and unfortunate murder of George Floyd. And then we face the COVID-19. And we are in difficult times, and unprecedented. But I am a believer that even through these difficult times, we can collectively put ourselves and keep ourselves on the right road to development, towards doing what's right and what's good for people. I serve people on a regular basis. I love it when I go to communities and people tell me, thank you for what HUD has done, because it's changed my life. Thank you from young people who says, I never thought my life would be better. And all of that can continue and should continue even through these difficult times, and especially through these difficult times. I love the saying by Emily Dickinson, and she says, I dwell in possibility. And I like that statement because she doesn't say, I think about what's possible, I dream about what's possible. She says, I dwell in possibility. And if all of us dwell in possibility, we can continue to do those things that will help not only the city of Atlanta, but help this nation.
Eugene, you want to follow that up?
I just want to say, Hunter, let's do this again in September.
Absolutely. Kyle, how about yourself?
I felt very distracted today. I think it's a sad day in the country, but as we're thinking about continuing with this conversation and the importance of it, what's going on today goes well beyond the horrific police brutality that we've seen, and there's a lot of issues underlying here, and decent, consistent housing can go a long way to work to solve those issues. And so I'll reiterate my call to anybody who may be in the housing business broadly, but not necessarily in affordable housing, to look for opportunities to get involved in your business and look for ways to support this industry, both as a business venture and as a citizen.
Wonderful. Margie, would you like to close us out?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for participating. I think our panelists did an amazing job. And my final words are, I'm a beg forgiveness person. I'm not an ask permission. If you have a great idea, if you see a need for affordable housing, if you have a deal, throw it out there. There are so many resources in Atlanta. There is an army of people that want affordable housing built. There's a mayor that's backing $1 billion plan. There's House ATL. Their resources are out there. We're looking for you to come in and help us grow our inventory of affordable housing.
Incredible stuff. I got to say thank you one last time. Thank you guys for all making the time today. And thank you everybody that was here. And if you're watching this at a later date, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.